I'm Conley Weinbarger, Vice President for Instructional Services here at the college. Again, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you here for today's SciTech presentation. And I am really pleased to kick off the 2014-15 year of the SciTech series. We started the series, 4 or 5 years ago. It's been tremendously successful. The notion was that we would highlight science and technology that's taking place here in our region, but we've also had some national speakers and highlighted a lot of the stuff that's happened, across the United States and really international as well. So it's really been very successful. We've had over 1,600 visitors, students, and outside folks come in for the series, over 20 presentations. And today's presentation is another great event. Today we wanted to highlight the Fulbright Scholars. And we were going to kick that off with having Dr. Green, who was a Fulbright Scholar, actually introduced the series, but unfortunately he's off campus and got tied up, and it wasn't going to be back in time to do the introduction, so I'm filling in. As I said, so Dr. Green was a Fulbright Scholar. Herb Burns, our department chair for design technologies, is also a Fulbright Scholar, and Herb is going to be introducing our Fulbright Scholar speaker. So as you can see now, that's why we were highlighting. So Herb, this past spring, as a Fulbright Scholar, spent a number of weeks in Russia, and he's made a number of presentations regarding that. It's really very interesting. For those of you who may not know, the Fulbright Scholars Program is a merit-based international scholarship program, and it is highly recognized and tremendously prestigious to be a part of the Fulbright Scholars Program. So we're happy to have 3 of them on our campus this semester. So it's great. At this time, I'm going to ask Herb to come up and introduce our speaker. Herb. Pleasure.
Good afternoon. Ray, let me say that it's an honor to have you as a Fulbright Scholar here with Forsyth Tech. And it's also an honor that you picked Forsyth Tech to do your research with us. Ray's Fulbright Professional Scholarship in Emerging Research will explore the nature of integration and the use of new emerging technologies into the community college curriculum and identify the drivers for this. As a result of multiple Australian research reports over many years, the Department of Innovation, Industry, Science and Research indicates a pivotal place in biotechnology and biomanufacturing that will hold many new requirements in the future for the Australian workforce. Ray is hosted by Forsyth Technical Community College under a National Center of Biotechnology Workforce of the Bio Network, also referred to as the NCBW. This center is extensively involved in the delivery of training, best practices to areas in which emerging biosciences technology is developing. To this end, Forsyth Tech has recently been awarded a federal funding grant to be the lead member of the United States Department of Labor Community College Consortium for BioCenter Credentials Trade Adjustment Assistance Grant, which is more commonly known as the C3BC. Forsyth Tech has strong links to other community colleges across the nation, including state and federal departments, and importantly, industry collaborations. Ray will visit several of these during his stay here while he's doing his Fulbright research. Ray is going to make extensive use of these networks and contacts that Forsyth Tech has made available to him. There are several clusters and collaborations of the community colleges in the U.S. And work which is emerging in technology and the biomanufacturing fields. As a Fulbright Scholar, I often appreciate being welcomed by a host country or host nation in their native language. So I've been studying Aussie very carefully. So Ray, good day, mate. We look forward to a Rabuk Chinwag as we are rapt to have you here with us today. So let's give a warm North Carolina welcome to Ray Cadmore. Did translation go okay?
Thank you, Conley, and thank you, Herb. It was really nice. It's great to be here in North Carolina. It's great to be in America. It's great to be a Fulbright. And it's a great privilege to be with people like you. My Fulbright Scholarship is a vocational education and training scholarship. It's sponsored by the Australian Department of Industry and we'll go to the next one. My institute, and obviously Forsyth Tech and North Carolina colleges and the college system in North Carolina. So there are a lot of people actually build what Fulbright people or Fulbright scholars do. We just don't get here on our own, and it's through a lot of support and a lot of good people giving us their support along the way. To give you a bit of a background on Fulbright, Senator J. William Fulbright was a prominent senator from Arkansas, probably from the 1930s through to the 1960s. Post World War II, he was pretty much appalled with the state of the world and was looking for ways of engaging America with other countries. And the first treaty that was ever signed between America and the United States was the Fulbright Treaty, which is a scholarship program that I'm on. It's in its 65th year, and it sits under the US Department of State. So it has a long history. It's a very prestigious thing, as Conley said before. In Australia, it's chaired by the Prime Minister, incumbent at the time, and the American Ambassador, incumbent at the time. So I'm very honoured to be a part of it. About me, I'm a teacher and project officer. I work at Sunraysia Institute at TAFE in Mildura in Victoria. I'll show you a map shortly just so you know where that is. I have a background. I was a survey recorder, hydrographic survey in the Navy for 7 years, and then I ended up in dairy technology and cheese manufacture for a number of years, which led me into the community college sector. I taught food safety and in the food processing industries around Mildura and throughout regional Victoria. I have a Master's in Professional Education and Training, and as I said, I work at Sunraysia Institute at TAFE. Now TAFE, for those of you who don't know, is roughly the equivalent of community college. It was formed to have a technical, industry-focused aspect to training in Australia, and really to provide skills for industry, which is where we see ourselves pretty much in place. There's a map of Australia. If you see the red, and up that section there, just where the thing is, that's roughly where I come from, Mildura. We're quite an isolated community. We're about 60,000 or 70,000 people. We have some major industries up there, horticulture, lots of grapes, lots of citrus, lots of vegetables, olives, almonds, and so very regionally focused institute, not dissimilar to a lot of the industries that North Carolina was in at one time. My institute is quite small. We have about 250 staff. We have about 8,000 students, and we probably service that whole northwestern section of Victoria, so quite a large service area, but away from the river and away from the population centres, very sparsely populated. We live on the river, and really, without the river, there is no industry where I'm from. We're very water reliant. We need that river. Recently, we had a 10-year drought, which in the last 2 years really started to challenge our industries and challenge the way we thought about things and how we're going to engage with the future, which is possibly what started my thinking on how do institutes think about the future and think about engaging with the future. We had one chap, I went to a conference once, and there was a chap from Detroit, and he was telling us, and this is at the height of the drought, and he was telling us, you guys need to get in front unless you want to be Detroit and have to go through that change after the fact. If you get in front, you can start to think about the things you can do. And that really started to prompt my thinking in the subject. To give you an idea, it's not the Mississippi. It's not a huge river. It's a small, by your standards, it's a small river. It's about 1,600 miles long. Along the Murray Valley, you'll find a green snake follows the Murray Valley, and that's irrigation, large plantings of grapes, olives, almonds, those type of things. Mechanisation is becoming more and more a part of the future, and for a number of reasons. Labour costs are much higher than they used to be. The much larger plantings, and there's labour shortages in Australia. We have trouble getting enough labour and enough skills at a number of levels. So largely mechanised. And this photo here is mallee scrub, and in my part of the state, that's largely sort of the natural flora, and that's there. It's quite a tough country, quite inhospitable if you don't know what you're doing out there. And sort of, we got in there and built the irrigation districts, and no water, and that's where we're back to. So probably more like Arizona than North Carolina. And if you drove about 20 miles north of Mildura, you'd find terrains not that unlike that, and quite rugged and hostile. Part of the thinking about the future is recently we had Solar Systems, which is a Silex company, and they developed these heliostat solar collectors. There's 40 of them been established in Mildura, but this is a trial. There were 40 in. There's a plan to put 1,000 more of these in, and if they get to 1,000, you'll have enough power to generate a town of 40,000 people. But customised training, the thing with this technology was nobody knew how to do it. You had the guys at design stage, they knew what they were doing. You had a whole host of subcontractors all tendering for the business, but they didn't know really what to, or how to handle the technologies. We ended up working very closely with Solar Systems to develop training around how to put this stuff in, put it in properly, and gain efficiencies. Because if you're going to be putting 1,000 of these in, and you can save $1,000 in production costs on each one, you've saved a lot of money over the course of the project. So it was very critical to the company that we did this. They managed to get the efficiencies and the time costs down, which is just another aspect of time. But that brings me to why I'm here and why I'm in North Carolina and why I'm with SciTech. And when I started to think about my Fulbright, I thought I'd go to Silicon Valley or somewhere in California, or there's a great college in San Francisco. But I met some community college people in Sydney, and they said, you've really got to talk to a guy called Russ Reed at SciTech in North Carolina. And I didn't know anything about North Carolina. I had no idea we had this advanced manufacturing capacity or biotech. Didn't know any of it was here. So I talked to Russ. Russ was really forthcoming and saying, well, you've got to come and see us. And that actually started me looking, or I'm talking to this guy, I better find out what he's talking about. So you're doing really interesting things here. So the question is, how do colleges and industry and government and universities work together? and how do we engage together in bringing new and emerging technologies online. And North Carolina is a pretty good example of that because, or structural change, we'll go back a bit, in Australia, lots of structural change. You guys are pretty much familiar with the same stuff that we're dealing with in terms of structural change. Our manufacturing system, or manufacturing industries are changing, they're not what they were. The Australian car industry is winding down. And as I said earlier, we have major concerns around drought and ongoing drought. Thankfully, in southeastern Australia, the drought's broken, but it was a major component of people's thinking. There's about 1 million Australians employed in the manufacturing industry, not all in the car industry, which is lucky, but there's a substantial number of Australians, 20 or 30,000 people, will find themselves out of work once the car industry realigns. So it's how those people get reabsorbed into new industries and how colleges work in that space and how government works in that space and new industries work together. But in Australia, manufacturing benefits, about 102,146 million in value adding, as I said, nearly 1 million jobs. R&D, manufacturing spends about 4.5 billion per annum. So they're big dollars. Manufacturing really does generate big dollars. It's such a critical part of what we do, and it doesn't matter within humanities or whatever it is, it generates really big dollars. The other side benefits, of course, are skills and capacity. And when you have a society with capacity to do things, a capacity to think and develop new things, it becomes so much more capable of doing more past that. But in Australia, we're really looking at the future, and there's a big future in agri-foods, which almost includes textiles to a degree. So we see large opportunities in exports into China and Asia. So it's how we gear up to manufacture foods and foodstuffs to get into Asia. Textiles and machine tools are all part of the new future we see. It's a lot of it's niche. It's find a market. We're not a huge country, so we're not going to dominate markets, even as manufacturers. But in a way, the future kind of suits us because we're used to operating in niches, and perhaps it's not such a big step for us to actually find ways to operate in new niches. Herb spoke before about the Australian government reports, and there's several there. There's a couple more here, if people would like to have a look at them. They're fairly interesting in a couple of ways. Where will I put it? No, it doesn't matter. Yeah. There'll be a loose leaf with that. Is there a leaf? No? Probably there. Doesn't matter. That's cool. But anyway, so some of those reports just pointed out that community colleges have been an important part of the American experience. I didn't realise that community colleges had a lot to do with Silicon Valley and the clusters that were there originally. They have a lot to do with this cluster that's emerged here in North Carolina. And this cluster in North Carolina has an influence over all of America. So what you do here is being recognised in different places, and how indicates to us how we should go about engaging with the future. And of course, what new skills and new technologies, but the bio network, which is a part of the North Carolina Community College system, it falls out of that. It's a tremendous, I'm trying to think of the word, a tremendous way of engaging with the future. It brings the community colleges and the state of North Carolina to bear on one subject. It's been doing it for 30 years, so it's a pretty great thing. And of course, you have the Centre for the Biotechnology Workforce and the Centre, or the Community College Consortium for Bioscience Credentials, which is managed through the NCBW. And why did I choose North Carolina? Well, apart from all the good things that are happening with NCBW, you had tobacco, you had textiles, and you had furniture. And it's so much like so many things in Australia. Like we've had industries that have simply, they don't exist, or if they exist, they're much different to what they used to be. And we can all just sit around and say, wow, we've lost something, or we say this is an opportunity, we get a chance to rebuild, and we need to start to rebuild or rethink our future and just re-image what we are. Sometimes we all get a bit stuck in the image of ourselves. My family are dairy farmers, if you go back far enough, and orchardists. But if we'd stayed thinking that's what we're ever going to be, is 30-acre farmers with 30 cows. Well, 30 cows isn't economic now. You might have 200 or 300 cows on a dairy farm. So the world's changed, and it's just how you change and move with it. But North Carolina started about 30 years ago to pursue biotech and pharmaceuticals, and the really great thing is it's continued on, and it's continued on in a bipartisan manner, because it seems that the legislature and the people in North Carolina recognise they're doing something good and they're getting a lot of value out of it. You've got the third largest biomanufacturing hub in the US, and you've developed a great supportive structure around that, and the bio network is one part of that. There are good wages and good job prospects in biotech. I understand about $73,000 is a pretty fair wage in the industry, which sounds pretty good to me, and there are good entry points for people to come in and build careers. And once you start to do these things, North Carolina, I was talking to some gentlemen the other day, and they were saying they're starting to leverage other industries coming in because things are happening. They know that there's science here, they know there's skilled workers here, they know there's a capacity to get more skilled workers here, so people are looking at North Carolina, and industries come. And from any region, from my region, it doesn't matter what region you are, that's a pretty good place to be if you have people starting to want to be with you because you're in the right place. But I said, North Carolina has good structures in place, and this is pretty much how the structure sits. You have the NC Biotechnology Centre down in the Research Triangle Park, which is just a fantastic facility, and it's staffed by some fantastic people, and it's been in that space for a long time. And it gives that industry a real focus and a real space to talk to, and it gives them someone direct. It's not just an economic developer from North Carolina telling them you've got to come here. These guys are saying we're specialists. We're here to, we give you specialist advice on how to get in North Carolina, and that's a pretty important place. The Bio Network and Capstone is the college sector, and that's where you guys fit in this. And Capstone does really interesting work in specialist skills training and customised training for companies coming in or companies that are already here. So it's an important place to be, and that works very closely with Russ Reid and the NCBW and Forsyth Tech. BTech is the university arm of UNC, and NC Ag Bio, which is in the space as well. So you have a whole structure set up there around supporting this industry that's such an important part, becomes such an important part of North Carolina. And Forsyth Tech, why did I get here? Because you do a good job, and you know, and I've had people from California, people from Texas, and people from Wisconsin, and people from Boston tell me to come and talk to Forsyth Tech, so that's where I am. But it's the lead agency of a national program to develop better education and training outcomes for the life sciences field. And as Herb said earlier, it has a large grant, a TACT grant, which is around developing skills, and that's leading the country in that type of thing. So again, for me to come and observe you guys is the right place to be. The BIF, or the Bio-Industry Fellowship, from what I've observed, is a really great way of doing it. It's getting instructors into classrooms, even if they're to learn about bioscience and what is it. People don't have to be scientists, they don't have to be in the biosciences field at all, they can be in any field and come in and learn a little about science and how it fits and how it can fit for North Carolina, or actually that's for all of America. Customised training is another thing that's happening here, and again it's building that training around the company's needs, finding out what their skills requirements are, putting things in place. Customised curriculum, which I think is important too. In Australia, we have a national curriculum, which is really good. It gives us all a good basis. In places though, as I said earlier, with the solar array that we developed, it's really important to put customised curriculum in place, and that's also something else that's happening here. And a core generic curriculum, the things that are critical to the central functions of any role or any job function, you know, whether it's the OH&S or the core sciences of understanding, as long as those cores are there and they're being integrated in this training, it works very well. And these things are coming together through the national networks and collaborations, and the Consortium for the Bioscience Credentials is a pretty important way of disseminating that information across America. North Carolina seems to be doing this well, and doing things well seems to get a bit of interest. It keeps the legislators and the parliamentarians interested. They can see that the state's dollars are being expended well. Corporates come here, as I said, because they can see that there's supporting structures and there's other ways for them to engage. The educators tend to look. I'm here looking how you guys are doing it. And economic and workforce developers around the place also tie in. And really, interest creates a lot more learning opportunity. Which ties a little bit to the life cycle of the startup. Community colleges don't necessarily fit in this at the start, but they need to be part of the conversation at the start. They need to understand how this may work 3-5 years down the track. Generally, so in the early collaborations, figure out what's going to happen, the way we're doing it, and the workforce developers, they'll get together and talk. The research universities, they have a lot to do with it at that time, because you have guys going into the Research Triangle Park or wanting to come in here to IQ. They need support. They need universities helping with their research and development. And so a lot of the initial training skills is around teaching people who've developed technologies or innovations how to run a business and to move it past being an innovation. So there's a whole range of soft skills that are needed there. It's, you know, how do I employ people? What skills do I need in my business once I get there? But as I said, it might be 5 years or so before the community colleges come involved. But if you're a part of that conversation and you're already in that region or in that space and you're developed in it, that means you have the capacity just to step sideways and support these industries as they move through your focus. It's a fairly short talk, but I'm happy to have a discussion around what we've talked about and to answer any questions. And there's a kangaroo and a koala, and there are my contacts there. So happy to talk. Yes.
It comes back to which comes first, the chicken and the egg, as far as developing the training, attracting the industry in, or do you attract the industry in, then develop the training, or does that quandary ever run into your?
You need the capacity to develop the training, and that's why you've got to be part of that conversation at the very start. If you don't have the capacity, then you'll be running.
You won't have either.
You won't have anything, and you'll be running backwards really hard. And you have industry saying, well, the state can't support us because the college system can't support us. So if you're not a part of that conversation very early on, knowing when things are, knowing what kind of skills your trainers and teachers will need, and where you should be developing your workforce as well. Right.
Talked about the river,
Yep.
that was pretty much everything involved in the river, and then you went to the solar side of it.
Yep.
Was the river producing your hydroelectricity, or was it, what was it?
No, if you go up into the mountains, there's hydro that would pull electricity off that river, but down lower, there's no hydro. In Mildura, all our power comes from Latrobe Valley, and actually, go back a bit. So roughly speaking, the Latrobe Valley's around there. So vast reserves of brown coal. probably, I think it's about 500 years reserves. But it gets pulled all the way up to there, Mildura, where we are. So massive line losses in that transmission. So solar would be good, it would help fill gaps. The thing about Mildura solar is, and we have quite a few companies looking at it, is from there we can put power into the New South Wales grid and also the Adelaide grid down here, as well as backfilling Victoria. Right. Alan?
In addition to Forsyth Tech, who are some of the other colleges throughout this North Carolina that are focusing on biotechnology?
Hey.
So there's probably 8 or 9 programs in the system, and so BioNetwork is one each one of those. And a big one, for instance, that does really good training is Wake. Another one that does great training is Alamance Community College. We have Alamance, Cadmore, and Ferris that actually work with us very closely on a grant that we're doing.
I'm interested a little bit in your K through 12 model. Here you probably have more of a British model K through 12 than we do, but here there's always been a historical disrespect for community colleges in the lexicon of the universe. It was always less than going to the four-year school and getting a bachelor's degree, and that's just been stood on its head lately. I think we're reinventing education here in the United States because we're giving every student a chance. In your technical schools, are you directed there because you're less than a stellar student, like was in our past?
No.
The lesser students, we can go to junior college, but now we're getting the best students, and we're getting college transfer students.
Yeah, you tend to see that occasionally. Probably to some degree. I mean, parents tend to look at university and say, we want doctors and lawyers and that type of thing. But in Australia, there's a strong regard for trades, and they're held in quite high regard in the community, and they're a strong focus of the current government is more trades. The current government's actually just issued a new statement on technical training and the vet or the TAFE sector, and they've said that they regard trade skills and those type of things as an equal to a university education. So there's a real pushback into skills. I think Australia, and I don't think we're alone, I think most countries have kind of set back and said, well, what about skills? We need people who can run this technology that we do, and you don't necessarily need research people all the time at that end. So skills are incredibly important. Australia's had a skills gap for a number of years. We had a mining boom, so vast skill shortages. We still have skill shortages in top of the agricultural sectors, but as they were developing new mines and new ports, lots and lots and lots of our labour just got sucked up into those things, and you had the traditional industries or other parts of Australia saying we can't get anyone because people are being paid really well to go and build these new assets and stuff like that. So in the recent past, skilled people, tradesmen in Australia, have had exceptionally good incomes, especially in those parts. So a lot of kids look at them now and they think, well, trades aren't such a bad way to go. It's good, but it's always going to be between the sectors. In Australia too, we have some universities which actually have TAFE integrated as part of their overall model, and that's designed to try and, I guess, it's for a matter of efficiencies is one reason, and the other part is it brings everybody into the same. So people who leave with a trade testament at Certificate 3 still have a testament that says Swinburne, for example, or if they leave with a bachelor's, they have a testament which says Swinburne as well. So it's that kind of place, and those pathways between those trades and higher ed or community college programs, nursing and those things, they're incredibly important as well. I think particularly as we look to find efficiencies in the system, how do you best train people? Does everyone need to be at university straight up, or are they better off served in our sectors, the TAFE or the community college sectors? Build their confidence, build their skills, learn how to learn, and then move on. That type of stuff. Okay. Anyone else?
Any more questions? Australia, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody else is interested, but what I'm interested in is how big is it, how many miles from here to here, and then what's the population of that total continent, and then how large is your section there?
The population's about 24 million. I don't know how wide it is, but I guess it's about the same width as the continental US. That's my cop out. And Victoria, I think we have about 3.5 million people, like so. And the most densely populated state. But Queensland's rapidly growing in the southeast corner of Queensland. Nice place to be. You should come and visit us.
Okay, well, Ray, on behalf of the college and on behalf of Bio Network and the National Center, we want to thank you for, first of all, coming here and being with us. That story that you told about somebody actually approaching in Australia, we made that up. Actually, it is true, actually, but let's not go there. But anyways, we've had a lot of fun with Ray coming in, and there's a lot of our colleagues here from the Innovation Quarter actually who've come over because they've befriended Ray and Lois. I want to thank you guys for coming over and supporting as well. It's great. And we know that you're here with Lisa, your wife, and you're actually living downtown in Winston.
Yes.
And you're actually getting to know the downtown quarter better than a lot of us who have lived here a long time.
We know sweet potatoes.
So I want to thank Dr. Weingarter and also Herb Burns, our Fulbright, for coming in today and recognizing him. And to do that, we have a certificate for you, actually, signed by Dr. Green for you to take back to Australia and to put on your wall.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
We never forget the spouse. So there's something in here that we know that Lisa would like. It's a biotech product.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Thank you, Russ.
And just for those who are regular at the SciTech lectures, Dr. McNellis is coming in from UNC Chapel Hill in October, and he's going to be talking on sustainable energy, so we're really excited, and I want to thank Michael Ayers for referring him to SciTech. We do this, we do these lectures very closely with the Math, Science, and Technologies Division, so we really want to thank Michael for that recommendation. And then in November, we'll have actually 4 people from our Industry Fellows program that you mentioned will come in and do a panel and tell about their experience going throughout North Carolina and visiting these bioscience facilities that we have that are quite substantial compared to the rest of the world.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming. It was a bit of an overview and a bit of a quick run through what I'm doing, but if you want to have any more discussions with me or talk about it, please give me a call. My details will be on the website or through NCBW at Forsyth. Mid-November, so I dodged the snow. Maybe. Well, I've never seen snow, so I have no great ambition to either, but thank you all.